What you're about to hear will shock you. It involves a woman who took something precious from another woman, something that can't just be replaced. A woman who thought she had all the power in her neighborhood. A woman who didn't know the one rule she was about to break. Never touch what belongs to a man like Maria Castellano. Before this story unfolds, I need to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. And trust me, you'll want to subscribe to more stories like this one. Because what happens next? Well, let's just say there are consequences for cruelty. Terrible, life-destroying consequences. Maria Castellano stood alone in her bathroom, staring at the stranger in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. This wasn't who she was supposed to be. Her scalp was raw. It was bleeding in places. Under the harsh bathroom light, she could see nothing but damage. Where her beautiful, waist-length black hair used to cascade down her back, there was now just stubble and jagged, uneven patches, like someone had taken a knife to her very identity. That hair meant everything to her. Her grandmother had braided it every single morning back in Sicily, weaving it with love and prayers for protection. On Maria's wedding night, her husband, Antonio, had run his fingers through these same locks, telling her it felt like silk spun from the darkness of midnight itself. He had buried his face in it, breathing her in like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. Now, it was all gone. Scattered across her front walkway, like the remains of something dead. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She reached up to touch what remained, and all she felt was pain. Raw, searing pain. The tears had finally stopped about an hour ago, but the ache in her chest, that felt like drowning while standing on dry land. She could still hear the sound of those electric clippers buzzing, a sound like angry mechanical wasps descending on her head. She could still smell her own hair burning under those blades. And worst of all, she could still hear Karen Whitmore's cruel laughter echoing in her mind. The laughter of a woman who had enjoyed every single second of what she had done. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She reached up to touch what remained, and all she felt was pain. The tears had finally stopped about an hour ago, but the ache in her chest, that felt like drowning while standing on dry land. She could still hear the sound of those electric clippers buzzing like angry wasps. She could still smell her own hair burning under the blades. And worst of all, she could still hear Karen Whitmore's cruel laughter echoing in her mind. It had started that morning with something so small, so innocent on the surface. But it would set off a chain of events that would change everything. Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, had shown up at Maria's door, holding her clipboard like it was a weapon of war. She was wearing her usual white tennis outfit, blonde hair perfectly styled, her expression full of superiority and barely concealed contempt. The woman looked at Maria the way someone might look at an insect they were about to step on. "Your garden violates HOA Code 7.3, Karen had announced, not even bothering with a greeting. She didn't smile. "Those roses are extending 4 inches past your property line. You have until tomorrow to remove them. If you don't, you're facing a $5,000 fine. But here's the thing, it wasn't really about the roses," Maria had tried to explain. Those weren't just any roses. They were cuttings from her mother's garden back in the old country, in Sicily. Her mother had passed away 3 years ago. She was buried in that ancient cemetery back in Palermo, and these roses were the only living connection Maria had left to her. These roses breathed. They lived. They were a piece of her mother still in this world. She had promised her mother, right there at her grave, that she would keep those roses alive. That she would tend them with the same love and dedication her mother had shown them for all those years. But Karen didn't want to hear it. She didn't care. "I don't care about your sob story," Karen had snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. "Rules are rules. Remove them by tomorrow, or face the fine," Maria had begged. She had offered every solution she could think of. She said she would trim them herself and build a small trellis to train them back onto her property. She even offered to dig them up and replant them exactly on the property line, even though she knew it would damage their roots and might kill them. Karen's eyes had gotten this strange, dark gleam in them. That's when Maria knew this wasn't really about the roses at all. This was about power. This was about control. You immigrants think you can come here and just ignore our rules, Karen had said coldly, her voice turning vicious. You think your little cultural trinkets are more important than property values. Well, they're not. And frankly, I'm tired of watching people like you ruin neighborhoods like this. Those words had stung like a physical blow, but Maria had swallowed her pride. That's what her husband had always taught her. Keep your head down, work hard, build your life, and don't make waves. That was the way to survive in America. Please, Maria had whispered. I'll fix it today. I promise. Karen had smiled, then a smile that made Maria's blood run cold. A predator's smile. That's when Maria should have known that things were about to get much, much worse. You know what? I'm tired of your kind ruining our neighborhood, Karen had said, stepping closer. And those roses aren't your only violation. I've been reviewing your file very carefully, and I found another code violation. A serious one. She had pointed directly at Maria's hair, which was hanging loose over her shoulders that morning, because Maria had been out in the garden since before sunrise, tending to those precious roses. HOA Code 12.8 states that all residents must maintain a professional appearance in common areas. Karen had recited, like she was reading from a law book. Your excessive hair length violates community standards. It's unprofessional. It's against the rules. Maria had blinked, confused. What? But I'm just in my garden. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not violating anything. The front garden is a common area visible from the street, Karen had responded, stepping so close that Maria could smell her expensive perfume, mixed with something bitter, something that smelled like old rage and cruelty. You have two choices. Cut your hair to an acceptable length by tomorrow, or I'll do it for you. Consider it community service. Maria had actually laughed. She thought Karen was joking. Who could possibly be that cruel? Who could be that petty, that downright evil? In real life, nobody could actually be that way. But Karen wasn't joking. Karen had pulled out her phone and made 2 quick calls. Within minutes, 2 middle-aged men from the HOA board showed up. They both looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight from foot to foot, but neither of them said a word as Karen backed Maria against her own front door. Then Karen had pulled electric clippers out of her oversized purse, the kind you see at barbershops. Professional grade. Before Maria could even scream, Karen had grabbed a fistful of her hair and turned those clippers on. The sound was horrible. It was like a swarm of mechanical wasps descending on her. Maria had fought back. She had screamed. She had begged Karen to stop. But Karen was stronger than she looked, fueled by years of power and petty tyranny. The 2 men from the HOA board held Maria's arms, while Karen cut away her beautiful hair, laughing the entire time like she was enjoying some kind of game. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules, Karen had whispered in her ear, her breath hot against Maria's neck. This is what happens when you think you're special. When you think you're better than everyone else. When it was finally over, Maria's long black hair was scattered all across her front walk like fallen feathers. Karen had even taken pictures with her phone, smiling as she snapped photo after photo of Maria's devastated face, her butchered scalp, the tears running down her cheeks. Consider this your official warning, Karen had said, brushing hair off her white tennis skirt like it was nothing. The roses better be gone by tomorrow. And if you try to report this, remember I have witnesses who will say you became violent and we had to restrain you. You're just an immigrant with a temper. I'm a respected community leader. Who do you think the police will believe? She had walked away, her heels clicking on the concrete, leaving Maria collapsed on her own doorstep, surrounded by the ruins of her dignity. Now, hours later. Maria stared at herself in that bathroom mirror, and didn't even recognize the woman looking back at her. Her eyes looked dead. The light in them, the spark that Antonio said reminded him of Mediterranean starlight, had been completely extinguished. She heard his car pull into the driveway at exactly 6 o'clock. Antonio was always punctual, a man of careful routines and habits. He owned several restaurants around the city, legitimate businesses that employed dozens of people. He paid his taxes on time, donated money to charity, and attended church every single Sunday without fail. But Maria knew the truth that the whispers in the neighborhood spoke about. She knew why men stepped aside when Antonio entered a room. She knew why waiters trembled when they served him. She knew why the police never asked too many questions about his business dealings. Her husband was not just a restaurant owner. There was something else, something darker, something that lingered around him like smoke. She heard his footsteps on the stairs. She heard him calling her name with that slight Italian accent that had never quite faded, despite 30 years in America. "Maria, Toro, I'm home," he called out. "I brought your favorite from the bakery. I got those cannoli and spogliatelle you love." His voice cut off as he appeared in the bathroom doorway. The bag from the Italian bakery fell from his hands, and the cannoli and pastries scattered across the tile floor. Cream and chocolate streaked the white porcelain. "Maria," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "what happened to your hair?" She couldn't speak. She could only watch his face in the mirror as he took in the damage, as he saw what had been done to her. She watched as his expression shifted from confusion to horror to something cold and terrible that she had never seen before, something that made him look like a completely different person. Who did this? His hands hovered over her head, afraid to touch her, as if she might shatter into a million pieces. "Maria Amor, who did this to you?" The tears started again, hot and angry this time. The story came tumbling out in a rush, the whole horrible ordeal. The roses and her mother's memory, the threats, the clippers, Karen's laughter, the humiliation, all of it. Antonio listened in complete silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rage or shout or throw things. He simply stood behind her, his reflection in the mirror growing colder and harder with each word she spoke. By the end, his face looked carved from marble. When she finished talking, he gently turned her around to face him. His hands cupped her damaged head with infinite tenderness, and he kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are still the most beautiful woman in the world," he said softly. "Your hair will grow back. But Maria, my love, my heart, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you try to stop her?" "No one would have believed me." Maria's voice broke. "I'm just an immigrant. She's respected and powerful. I would have been the one punished if I fought back." Antonio's eyes turned into frozen oceans. "That's wrong, Maria. She doesn't know who you are. She doesn't know who your husband is. She made a very serious mistake today. Antonio, please." Maria grabbed his hands. "Don't do anything that will bring trouble. It's just hair. It will grow back. I don't want you to do anything." For the first time in their entire marriage, she saw him truly angry. Not at her, never at her, but angry in a way that made the air in the bathroom feel thin and hard to breathe. "She attacked you," he said quietly. "She humiliated you. She violated you in your own home because of roses your mother gave you, because of hair that I have loved since the day I first met you. She took photographs to mock you. She threatened you with her power." He straightened up, and suddenly, he wasn't her gentle husband anymore. He was someone else entirely. He was the man that all the whispers spoke about. "She touched what is mine," Antonio said. "She harmed what I treasure most in this world. There are rules for such things, Maria, very old rules. I'm going to have a conversation with Mrs. Whitmore, just a conversation. I promise you nothing illegal, nothing that will bring police to our door. But she needs to understand that actions have consequences." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She lay in bed while Antonio made phone calls in his study, his voice too low for her to hear, but the tone of his voice sending shivers down her spine. She heard names she recognized from the restaurants. Men who came to the back doors after the restaurants closed at night. Men who called Antonio Don. She had married him, knowing what he was. Or rather, knowing the rumors of what he was. Antonio had never confirmed or denied them. He simply loved her, provided for her, and treated her like a queen. Whatever darkness existed in his business life had never touched their marriage, till now. The next morning, Antonio kissed her goodbye as usual. "Stay home today," he told her. "Rest. I've called a specialist to come look at your hair. See if anything can be done to help it grow back faster." He paused at the door, and Maria, "Don't go to the front windows today. Trust me." She trusted him, but curiosity got the better of her. At 10 o'clock in the morning, she peeked through the curtains and saw 3 large moving trucks pull up to Karen Whitmore's house directly across the street. Men in professional uniforms began emptying the house with ruthless, mechanical efficiency. Furniture, boxes, everything came out. Karen came running out of her house in her bathrobe, screaming, "What are you doing? You can't do this. I'll call the police." One of the movers, a thick-necked man with cold eyes, showed her a piece of paper. Even from across the street, Maria could hear his words clearly. "Foreclosure, ma'am. The bank owns the property now. You need to vacate immediately." "That's impossible," Karen's voice cracked. "Our mortgage is paid. We own this house outright." The mover just shrugged. "Not according to the bank's records, ma'am. You have 1 hour to collect personal items. Then we're changing the locks." Karen's husband appeared, looking confused and terrified. They argued with the movers, made frantic phone calls, but nothing changed. Within 2 hours, their entire house was emptied, and they were standing on the curb with 3 suitcases and absolutely nowhere to go. Maria watched, her heart pounding in her chest. This was impossible. You couldn't just take someone's house like this. Not legally, not in America. But then she saw Antonio's black Mercedes pull up down the street. He didn't get out of the car. He just sat there, watching, until Karen looked up and saw him. Even from a distance, Maria could see the blood drain completely from Karen's face. Karen knew. Somehow, she knew exactly who Antonio was and what he had done. She looked terrified. But it didn't end there. Over the next week, Maria watched as Karen's life systematically came apart at the seams. Her husband's job at the investment firm ended abruptly due to irregularities in his accounts. Their bank accounts were frozen, pending an IRS investigation. Their cars were repossessed. But Antonio wasn't finished. Maria discovered the true extent of his reach when she overheard a phone conversation he was having late one night. "Make sure everyone knows," Antonio said quietly into his phone. "Every business, every club, every organization in this city. The Whitmore name is poison now. No credit, no loans, no memberships, no mercy." Maria's hands trembled as she listened to him. She had asked for protection, but this felt like something else entirely. This felt like annihilation. That evening, she confronted him about it. "Antonio, this is too much. You're destroying her completely. You're going too far." He looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "Do you remember what she said to you, Maria? You immigrants think you can ignore our rules." She didn't just attack you physically. She attacked your heritage. She attacked your mother's memory. She attacked everything you are. She did it with pleasure. "But we're better than this," Maria whispered. Antonio crossed the room and took her hands in his. "I need you to understand something, Toro," he said. "In my world, there are rules. Old rules. When someone violates the sanctity of a man's home, when they harm his family, there must be consequences. Not because I want revenge, although I do, but because if I don't respond, I show weakness. And weakness in my position invites more attacks. So this is about revenge." Maria pulled away, hurt. "No," his voice was firm. "This is about you never having to be afraid again. This is about every single person in this neighborhood, in this city, knowing that Maria Castellano is protected. You are untouchable. You are sacred. No one will ever dare harm you again, Maria, not ever. And that is worth any price." She saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was a declaration. It was a message written in Karen's destroyed life that would echo through every corner of his world. Karen was removed from the HOA board after anonymous complaints about embezzlement and abuse of power led to an independent audit. The audit revealed thousands in misappropriated funds, though Maria suspected the evidence had been carefully manufactured. Their country club revoked their membership. Their friends stopped returning their calls. They were forced to move to a small apartment on the wrong side of town, the kind of place Karen had spent her entire life looking down upon. Maria watched it all unfold from her window. Her heart broke even as she watched justice being served. She saw Karen crying on the curb as movers took away her furniture. She saw Karen's husband, with his shoulders slumped in defeat, loading suitcases into a borrowed truck. She even saw Karen look across the street at Maria's house, her face full of terror and understanding. And through it all, Antonio never admitted to anything. He simply held Maria at night, stroking her growing hair, whispering words of love in Italian. But Maria knew there was more coming. She could feel it in the way Antonio watched the news. She could hear it in the late-night phone calls that still came. She could see it in the grim satisfaction in his eyes when he heard that Karen had been forced to take a job as a cashier at a discount store. 2 weeks after the incident, Maria decided it was time to talk to him again. "Antonio," she said one night, "isn't this enough? You've destroyed her life. She's lost everything. Can't it be over now?" He looked at her with those dark eyes that had seen things she could only imagine. "Toro, you have a kind heart. It's one of the million reasons I love you," he said. "But Karen Whitmore didn't just cut your hair. She attacked your dignity. She tried to break your spirit. She thought she could do this because you were powerless, because you were different, because she had authority and you had nothing." He took her hands in his. "I have spent my entire life making sure that people understand respect, making sure that the weak are protected, that the strong don't prey on the helpless. Karen Whitmore is a bully who has spent years tormenting people she saw as beneath her. Your roses were not her first cruelty. They were simply the cruelty that mattered to me." "But what else is there?" Maria whispered. "You've taken her house, her money, her status. What more can you possibly do?" Antonio smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I can make sure she understands exactly what she took from you. I can give her perspective." 3 days later, Maria received a letter. It was from Karen, handwritten on cheap notebook paper, the kind that costs $1 for 100 sheets. "Dear Mrs. Castellano, I am writing to apologize for my actions. I had no right to touch your hair or to threaten you about your roses. I was cruel and vindictive, and I took pleasure in hurting you. This was wrong. I have been asked to explain to you why I did what I did, and to be completely honest, even though the truth shames me. My entire life, I have been insecure. I grew up poor in a trailer park, looked down upon by everyone around me. When I married Richard and we moved into Oak Hills Estates, I finally felt like I was somebody. I became HOA president because it gave me power over the people who once looked down on me. But that power corrupted me. I started to enjoy making others feel small. I would find violations, create rules, and invent problems just so I could assert my authority. You weren't my first victim. Over the years, I drove 3 families out of the neighborhood with fines and harassment. I destroyed a teenager's business because his lawn mowing company was too successful. I reported an elderly man to code enforcement because his rose bush, like yours, violated my rules. When I saw you that morning, so beautiful with your long hair and your old-world grace, I felt that old envy rise up in me. You had something I could never have: natural elegance, genuine kindness, a husband who clearly adored you. So I took something from you. I wanted to see you brought low. I wanted you to feel the humiliation I had felt my whole life. I know now that what I did was evil. Your husband has made sure I understand exactly how evil. He hasn't hurt me physically. He hasn't threatened me. But he has taken everything I valued and shown me how empty it all was. The house, the status, the power, none of it was real. It was all built on cruelty and fear. I am writing this letter because I was told that if I explain myself honestly, if I confess my sins, then I can begin to rebuild my life. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I am truly sorry for what I did to you. Your roses should have been treasured, not threatened. Your hair should have been admired, not destroyed. You should have been welcomed to the neighborhood, not terrorized. I hope someday your hair grows back, and that you can look in the mirror without remembering what I did. I hope your roses still bloom. I will carry the shame of my actions for the rest of my life. Karen Whitmore. Maria read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of anger anymore, but something far more complex. Pity, perhaps. Understanding. Even a strange kind of satisfaction. Did you make her write this? She asked Antonio when he came home. I suggested it might be helpful for her, he said carefully. I told her that you were a forgiving woman, that if she showed genuine remorse, you might be willing to let bygones be bygones. His silence after that was answer enough. What happens to her now? Maria asked. That depends on you, Amor, he said. If you want, I can make sure she never bothers anyone again. She'll disappear from this city, start over somewhere far away, where her reputation won't follow her. He paused. Or, he continued, you can choose mercy. I can arrange for her to get her job back, to find a modest apartment, to live a quiet life, not her old life, never that, but a livable one. She'll never have power again, but she'll have existence. Maria looked at the letter again. She thought about her mother, who had always taught her that revenge was a poison you drank yourself. She thought about her roses, still blooming in her garden, stronger than ever, after she had carefully tended them back to health. She thought about her own hair growing back and thick and dark, already reaching her shoulders. Give her the quiet life, Maria said finally. But with conditions. She has to volunteer at an immigrant services center twice a week. She has to see the faces of the people she once looked down upon. She has to help them, serve them, learn from them. Antonio smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. You are a better person than I deserve. No, Maria said, taking his hand. I'm a person who remembers what it's like to be powerless. I don't want to become what she was. He pulled her close, kissing the top of her growing hair. This is why I love you. You have the strength to be kind. Maria stood in her garden, pruning her mother's roses. They had grown wild and beautiful, spilling over the trellis that Antonio had built for her, filling the air with their perfume. Her hair hung past her shoulders again, not quite as long as it used to be, but getting there. The neighborhood had changed too. A new HOA president, a kind retired teacher named Mr. Chen, had abolished most of Karen's cruel rules. The teenagers could run their businesses again. The elderly couple down the street planted a vegetable garden without fear. Immigrant families moved in and planted their own roses, their own pieces of home. Maria had become something of a legend in Oak Hills Estates. People whispered her story, though the details changed with each telling. Some said her husband was connected to powerful people. Others said he was a secret millionaire who had bought Karen's debt. A few knew the truth, but would never speak it aloud. But everyone agreed on one thing. Maria Castellano was not to be crossed. Not because she was cruel, but because she was protected by something fierce and absolute. She heard footsteps on the sidewalk and looked up. Karen Whitmore stood at the edge of her property, looking thinner and older. Her blonde hair had gone gray. Her expensive clothes were replaced with discount store basics. She held a small package wrapped in brown paper. Mrs. Castellano, Karen said quietly. I hope I'm not intruding. Maria set down her pruning shears. What can I do for you, Mrs. Whitmore? I wanted to bring you something, Karen said, extending the package with shaking hands. I've been volunteering at the immigrant center like you required. I've been learning about the people I once. She swallowed hard. I've been learning. One of the women there, Fatima, she's from Syria. She told me about her garden back home. About the roses her grandmother grew. Maria unwrapped the package. Inside was a small potted rose bush, barely more than a cutting with one perfect red bloom. It's a Damascus rose, Karen continued. Fatima helped me order it from a specialty nursery. It's supposed to be one of the oldest varieties in the world. I thought maybe you'd like to add it to your garden, to remember your mother. And also to remember that things can grow back even after they've been cut down. Maria looked at the rose, then at Karen. The woman looked broken and humbled, but there was something genuine in her eyes now, something human. Thank you, Maria said quietly. I'll plant it beside my mother's roses. They'll grow together. Karen nodded, unable to speak. She turned to leave, then stopped. Your hair, she whispered. It's beautiful. It's growing back, Maria interrupted gently. Everything grows back, Mrs. Whitmore, if we give it time and care. Karen looked at her for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand you. After everything I did, after what your husband did to me in return, you're still kind. Why? Maria set down the potted rose and stepped closer. Because I remember who I was before you cut my hair, she said. I was happy, at peace, full of love. When you took my hair, I felt like you took part of my soul. I was angry, broken, empty. She touched her growing hair. But then I realized something. If I let that anger consume me, if I let your cruelty turn me cruel, then you would have truly won. You would have destroyed who I was. So I chose to remain myself. Not for you, Karen, for me. Karen wiped her eyes. I spent my whole life thinking power was everything. That if I could control others, if I could make them fear me, I would finally feel secure. But your husband showed me real power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that protects instead of oppresses. He loves me, Maria said simply. That's his power. Love makes us fierce. I never had that, Karen admitted. Richard married me for my father's business connections. I married him to escape poverty. We've never really loved each other, not like you and your husband. Maria felt a wave of compassion wash over her. It's not too late, Karen. Love can grow anywhere, even in concrete. You just have to stop building walls and start planting seeds. After Karen left, Maria carried the Damascus rose to her garden. Antonio appeared beside her, materializing as he often did, silent and watchful. You gave her the rose, he observed. She earned it, Maria said. She's changing. Maybe not enough, maybe not fast enough, but she's trying. And if she's not, if this is just an act, Maria smiled, pressing her hand against his chest. Then I have faith that my husband will know what to do, but I think she's genuine. I think she looked into the abyss you showed her and realized what she had become. Antonio wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on her head. You have more faith in people than I do. That's why we work, Maria said. You protect me from the world's cruelty. I protect you from becoming cruel yourself. They stood together in the garden, surrounded by roses that had survived everything thrown at them. Above, the sun broke through the clouds, warming their faces. Maria's hair caught the light, shining like black silk, growing longer every day. And in the soil at their feet, a Damascus rose began to root, ready to bloom in a new land, far from home, but finally safe. Maria sat in her garden, now famous throughout the neighborhood for its beauty. The Damascus rose had grown into a massive bush, intertwining with her mother's roses to create a wall of red and pink blooms that people walked blocks just to see. Her hair hung past her waist again, now with distinguished silver at the temples. She wore it in a long braid, the way her grandmother had taught her, the way her daughter now learned to do. Yes, a daughter, little Sophia, born 4 years ago, with Antonio's dark eyes and Maria's olive skin, and a temperament that promised she would take no nonsense from anyone. Sophia played in the grass, making flower crowns from rose petals, her laughter like music in the air. The doorbell rang. Maria found Karen Whitmore on her doorstep, looking healthier than she had in years. She had a steady job now managing the Immigrant Services Center. She had remarried a kind man who worked as a teacher. She had found peace in service rather than power. I came to say goodbye, Karen said. Richard and I are moving. He got a teaching position in Oregon, and I've been offered a job running a refugee resettlement program there. That's wonderful, Maria said, and she meant it. I wanted to thank you, Karen continued, for giving me a chance to become someone better. For not destroying me when your husband could have ended me. We both know that. But you chose mercy. Maria smiled. We all deserve a chance to grow back, Karen. Like roses after a hard pruning. Karen laughed a real laugh, free and genuine. I'll never forget what I did to you. But I'm grateful you gave me the chance to do better. After Karen left, Antonio appeared in the doorway. Sophia perched on his shoulders, squealing with delight. She's really changing, he observed. Your mercy was not misplaced, Maria replied, taking his hand. And neither was your protection. You showed her the consequences of cruelty. I showed her the rewards of change. Together, we taught her something she never learned before. And what is that amour? Maria looked at her roses, at her daughter, at her husband, at the life they had built from silk threads and iron will. That dignity cannot be taken, she said softly, only given away. And that real love protects what it treasures, without becoming the thing it fights against. Antonio kissed her forehead right at the hairline where her beautiful black hair began. You are my conscience, he whispered. And you are my armor, she replied. Sophia giggled above them, pulling rose petals from her father's hair, scattering them like blessings over her parents' heads. In the garden, the roses bloomed eternal, survivors of every storm, beautiful precisely because they had been tested and had endured. Just like the silk thread of Maria's hair, stronger now where it had been broken. Just like vengeance, transformed by mercy into something that healed rather than destroyed. Just like love, which protects fiercely but never loses its tenderness. The story ends where it began, in a garden with roses, with hair like midnight silk, and with the understanding that the strongest people are not those who wield power, but those who choose when to show mercy. Karen Whitmore learned this lesson the hard way. She never forgot it, and she spent the rest of her life trying to deserve the grace she had been given. That evening, as the sun set over the garden, Maria stood at her bedroom window, braiding her hair for the night. Antonio came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Do you have any regrets? He asked softly. About how I handled Karen. About what I took from her. Maria was quiet for a moment, watching the roses sway in the evening breeze. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that cruelty exists in the world. But no, I don't regret that you protected me. You showed her that actions have consequences. And I showed her that people can change. Together, we gave her something she never had before. What's that? Antonio asked. A chance to find her humanity. Maria turned in his arms. You know what the strange thing is? I think about that day sometimes when she cut my hair. I think about how powerless I felt, how small, and I realize now that she felt that way her entire life. She was trying to make others feel her pain. Antonio's jaw tightened. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, Maria agreed, but it explains it. And understanding doesn't mean forgiving immediately. It means choosing not to become what hurt us. She touched his face gently. You are a dangerous man, Antonio Castellano. You have power that most people can't even imagine. But the most powerful thing you've ever done wasn't destroying Karen's life. It was listening when I asked you to spare her. It was trusting my judgment about mercy. You make me better, he whispered. And you keep me safe, she replied. That's marriage. That's love. We balance each other. Downstairs, Sophia called for them, wanting her bedtime story. They went down together, Antonio carrying their daughter, while Maria followed, her long braids swaying behind her like a banner of survival. As Maria tucked Sophia into bed, the little girl looked up at her mother's hair with wonder. Mama, Your hair is so long and pretty. I want mine to grow just like yours. Maria smiled, stroking her daughter's dark curls. It will, my love. Hair grows.